2025 has honestly been insane for JRPGs. It doesn't sit as the best year of JRPGs of all time. I think a couple of more recent years to hold that crown pretty tightly, but this has been a year full of personality and uniqueness that I haven't seen in a really long time. There's this feeling that the genre is stretching in all sorts of different directions, and somehow everything landed in the same 3-month period this year, which if you were like me, you were sitting in the corner crying from decision paralysis on what to play, but I actually was able to play just about everything and put reviews out for it. So definitely go check that out on my channel because I basically didn't sleep in October. And just like previous years, this video right here is my annual top 10 JRPGs of all time list. And it's one of my favorite videos to make because it's just me jumping on here, gushing about all my amazing experiences that I've had with JRPGs for the year. All the weird, kind of creative and inventive and sometimes completely unhinged ways that JRPGs pull me in. And luckily, 2025 is full of that. I've got some incredible picks this year, but before we get into the list, you know I have to talk about some honorable mentions because this year, there were so many games. There were too many games to fit into one top 10 list. So yeah, sit down, grab a drink, maybe your favorite snack, because this is probably gonna be a super long video. I've got a lot of amazing games to talk about this year. But before we do, if you like JRPGs like I do, and you love hearing people go on about why great games are great, then be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. I'm super close to hitting 15,000 subs and would love to reach that milestone by the end of this year. And with all that out of the way, let's get into it. All right, let's kick things off with some honorable mentions, some games that didn't quite make the cut, but I absolutely loved them. Don't think of these games as like mid-tier games. They're all really good. These are games that just didn't crack the top 10 because 2025 was just full of really great games. So let's get into a few to start the list off. First up, I have Raito Remastered. This one right here is such a treat to finally be able to play. I had never played this game before, and the Raito games have always really piqued my interest. They have these stylish, offbeat little sidesteps of the Megaten universe, and getting this one cleaned up and modernized without losing the charm was honestly all I really wanted. The combat still has that scrappy kinetic feel, and the upgrades they made here are significant. Looking back at the original, the combat felt very basic, and in the remaster, the changes they made feel great. And the vibe, that smoky, classic detective noir energy, still hits in a way that nothing else does. It's a remaster done with care, even if it's still a little bit niche even for this genre. Where it could have been improved, in my opinion, was some of the pacing elements. I felt like in the middle of the game, it kind of hit a wall, and it wasn't progressing the story in super interesting ways like the beginning and the end do, but overall the game is a great experience, and I think any fan of the genre or specifically Persona and Shin Megami Tensei games should definitely give this one a try. Now I know it's the holiday season and we are all trying to get the best deals on games. I know I am. So Instant Gaming, I want to shout them out because they definitely have you covered on that front. They have games like Monster Hunter Stories 2 for $38.49. Expedition 33, one of my favorite games of the year, is only $30. Nier Automata at $16.67, and The Sea of Stars for $15. These are all amazing games. Instant Gaming has much more, so jump over there and see what they have to offer. Big thanks to Instant Gaming for sponsoring today's video, and with all that out of the way, let's jump right back in. 100 Line Last Defense Academy is next up, and it's a super long game that I've basically been slow playing throughout the entire year. This narrative can get really weird in the best possible way. 100 Line is stylish, punchy, and full of that slightly surreal storytelling energy that constantly keeps you off balance. I don't even want to talk about the story at all because I feel like every single element that I would mention in the story would be some sort of spoiler. It's that crazy, it's that good. It can be a little messy at times, but it's super interesting, and I always respected that. This is a must play for fans of the genre, and you'll be shocked at some of the story twists in this one. I would recommend that you play this one on handheld because it will absorb a ton of your time, and this just feels like a game that belongs on a handheld system. Rune Factory Guardians of Azuma is a game that completely absorbed my time when the Switch 2 came out. This was the main game I was playing. Yes, I played Mario Kart just like everyone else, but Guardians of Azuma completely grabbed my attention. I've always liked the Rune Factory series, but Guardians of Azuma managed to streamline a lot of the things that I had issues with. It made the combat so much better, and all of the farming mechanics and stuff were so well done. If it wasn't for the last act of this game would definitely be in the top 10. Unfortunately, it trudges on for a little bit too long, and the end of the game does a lot of things that I'm not really too fond of in terms of, oh, you think the game's over? Well, actually, there's 5 more hours to play. And then you think it's over again, and then there's 5 more hours to play. And it just felt like everything was tacked on to kind of just pad the playtime and make the game a little bit longer. Overall, though, I had a great time with this one. Definitely play it if you haven't had a chance to yet. All right, with the honorable mentions out of the way, it's time to get into the top 10 list. Now, this list is just full of amazing games, and I'm going to start things off with Digimon Story Time Stranger. And man, this one really surprised me in the best possible way. I've never really been a fan of the Digimon games, but a friend of mine, Avenger Mag, told me I had to play it when I was at PAX West. So I did, and man, am I glad I did, because I loved this game. The Digimon games tend to fly under the radar, but there's this earnestness to them, this commitment to systems and progression that scratches an itch nothing else quite does. And Time Stranger might be the most confident the series has felt in a long time. The big hook this time around is, of course, the time travel angle, and it's handled with way more personality than I expected. Instead of being a gimmick, it's woven into the structure of the story and even the way you raise your Digimon. You're constantly hopping between different eras of the digital world, meeting different versions of the same characters, seeing how factions shift and how your involvement, even in tiny ways, ripples outward. It gives the world this living, shifting identity that makes exploration feel meaningful. But really what puts Time Stranger on the list is the gameplay loop. I hope I'm saying that right. Feel flexible, and I love that the game encourages experimentation rather than punishing it. You'll hit a wall and go, okay, I need a different build, and instead of restarting everything and looking back on all the wasted time you spent in a year overloaded with games to play and a backlog as long as a CVS receipt, the game gives you tools to pivot, to try something weird. The team building feels like solving a puzzle with pieces you molded yourself. And for as fun and vibrant as the story is, it also has these surprisingly reflective moments about identity and the things we choose to leave behind as we grow, which this feels so fitting for a series literally built around evolution. It's still colorful, still very Saturday morning anime in the best possible way, but it has a little bit more bite than usual. So why is it number 10 and not higher? Honestly, because this year is stacked. Time Stranger does so many things right, but the games above it just pushed a little bit further in terms of ambition or emotional resonance. But make no mistake, this is one of the strongest Digimon entries to date, and if you love creature collecting games with unique progression systems, this is absolutely worth your time. Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition is an amazing game. I mean, it's Xenoblade, so it's definitely great, right? Well, this game's reception was a little bit more mixed than we had anticipated, and me personally, I loved Xenoblade Chronicles X on the Wii U, and I love it on the Nintendo Switch. This is one of those games that many of us fans were begging to have ported. Finally, it was ported, and I spent a good 100 hours making my way through this one. Xenoblade X has always been about scale. That's the word that defines it, I think. Not just in terms of the map size, though Mira is still jaw-dropping in 2025, the kind of world where you see a mountain-sized creature in the distance and your brain immediately goes, yep, I'm gonna climb that and probably die. But the Definitive Edition tightens so many of the rough edges that held the original back from broader appreciation. The UI is cleaner, the onboarding is smoother, and thankfully, the scale systems finally make sense and make for a much more streamlined experience. The thing that really hit me on this revisit is how much this game leans into the feeling of being small in a massive universe. But instead of things feeling super bleak, it's invigorating. You're always discovering something new. Even the way the quests are presented, with all the little stories scattered around the world, it gives the world this sense of being lived in, chaotic and constantly shifting. The combat feels slicker, the performance bumps help a ton, and visually, it's just so much more pleasant to look at. They didn't turn it into a different game, but they made the game it was trying to be back in 2015 finally shine through. Why isn't it higher though, you might ask? Same story as before. The emotional through line still isn't as strong as some of the numbered Xenoblade entries. X's gameplay and exploration first, and while I adore that, the top half of this list comes down to games that really nailed the complete package. But as far as open world JRPGs go, this is still one of the most interesting games I've ever played. Next up, we have Bravely Default Flying Fairy HD, and wow, this game is truly a blast to play and probably my favorite Switch 2 launch game if I'm being honest. Yes, I played Mario Kart World, and yes, Rune Factory totally absorbed me, but Bravely Default is a game that I spent so much time playing on the 3DS, and man, this game is just JRPG perfection on the Nintendo Switch 2. The thing that always made Bravely Default special is how playful it is with traditional JRPG design. The job system still feels incredible, flexible, expressive, and rewarding, and that just one more fight so I can unlock this ability kind of way. And the Brave and Default mechanic is still one of the smartest turn-based innovations in the last decade. Every battle feels like a little mind game. Do I go all in now? Do I defend and wait? It keeps encounters lively and tactical without ever slowing you down. The HD version also does a ton of subtle quality of life work. The pacing feels smoother, the UI is clearer, and the fast forwarding tools, which were already amazing in the original, just feel snappier here. It respects your time without losing any of its charm. And of course, revisiting this world with modern fidelity really highlights how strong the writing is. The cast is so earnest, and the game has these huge twists, and they still land because they feel like they're in service of its themes instead of shock value. It's playful, but it's very sincere. I will say, because this is still a remaster of a 3DS game, there are moments where the age shows. Some of the dungeon design feels a little straightforward, and if you weren't into the repetition at the end of the original, that's still here. Though I think the pacing updates soften it a bit. But even with all that said, Flying Fairy HD earns its spot because it reminded me what made this little sub-series so special. It's traditional but inventive, cozy, and clever, but the job system remains one of the genre's absolute best. Fantasy Life I is another game that I've kind of been slow playing throughout the entire year. Similar to Rune Factory, Guardians of Azuma, it's one of those games that just does that daily life sim so well, and actually, Fantasy Life I does just about everything Rune Factory does better. This one is just wholesome chaos, and I mean that in the best possible way. Fantasy Life has always lived in that space between a JRPG and life sim, and The Girl Who Steals Time really captures the heart of that formula. What makes this entry shine is the sense of comfort it builds. You're exploring, crafting, fishing, gathering, fighting, but all of it feels breezy and relaxing. The lives, basically the job system here, are once again the highlight because they make even the smallest tasks feel like meaningful progression. You can spend hours just chopping wood or cooking, and the game makes that feel like a valid and rewarding experience. This time around, the story leans more into the magical mystery angle. The whole stealing time concept plays into how the island grows and changes. It's gentle storytelling, nothing too heavy, but it gives the world enough structure that you're never just drifting aimlessly. There's always a sense of, oh, I'll do one more quest, which then becomes 5, and suddenly you've remodeled a house and forgotten what the main mission even was. The combat is simple, but it's smoother. The crafting is still addictive, but it's cleaner, and the world feels warm. I mean, this is just crazy JRPG comfort food. That's the best way I can put it. If there's a drawback, it's that the pacing can feel slow if you're not in the mood for something mellow. This isn't a game that pushes intensity. It invites you into a little bit of a rhythm of sorts. But if that rhythm clicks with you, it's one of the most satisfying games out there. Pokemon Legends ZA is easily my favorite modern Pokemon game. I was shocked at how good this one was, and I actually wasn't that interested in it until I played it at PAX West. And when I sat there and played this game, I felt challenged, I felt interested, and I felt like there was a lot of creativity put into how they were experimenting with new game mechanics. And I really hope some of the new mechanics make their way into the mainline Pokemon games. ZA feels like Pokemon is finally embracing the idea of the world itself being the character. Lumiose City is reimagined here as this evolving space where you research your discoveries and your interactions actually change the environment. It's not fully open world like Arceus, but the more segmented layout works because every district has its own identity, its own little ecosystems even. You're learning how Pokemon function within the city, not just in nature, and that twist keeps things fresh. The catching and battling mechanics feel like a refined hybrid of classic and legend style gameplay. Sneaking around, observing behaviors, planning encounters, that loop is still incredibly satisfying. The game even encourages curiosity, and it rewards your patience in a way that the series has never done. And honestly, I just love the tone of this game. It has that adventurous spark that I think a lot of longtime fans want. The feeling that you're participating in something bigger than a gym challenge. The story digs a bit deeper into the lore of things, and while it's not rewriting the franchise, it gives the world of X and Y a sense of depth we haven't really seen before. I loved my time with Legends CA, and I 100% plan on going back to it for the post-game content. It's a fun Pokemon game that I think most fans would enjoy. All right, we're getting into the top 5 here. This is where the games, every single one of them is so good. I mean, Final Fantasy Tactics, the Xenoblade Chronicles is up at 5, and I honestly was like, man, this is all the way down at 5. I can't believe that because of how good this game is and how much I fell in love with it when I played it earlier this year. The biggest thing that stood out to me is the clarity, visual clarity, the UI, and even the storytelling. It all comes together so perfectly. The original narrative was always brilliant, but it was also very dense, political, and occasionally buried under localization issues. The Xenoblade Chronicles adds the Chronicles feature that updates in real time to break down everything for you as it's happening. Those big, morally tangled character moments feel more direct, more readable, and somehow even more painful. The voice acting adds so much to the story, and you're left with an all-new perspective on this game after playing it. Gameplay-wise, this is still peak tactical JRPG combat. It's deliberate and methodical in the best possible way. Positioning matters, elevation matters, planning 2 or 3 turns ahead matters. Tactics has always encouraged you to engage with its systems thoughtfully rather than brute forcing your way through problems. And the Xenoblade Chronicles makes that smoother with quality of life improvements that feel invisible in a good way. Visually, the upgrades were minor, but definitely look nice. The art direction here holds up really well. It keeps the painterly feel, keeps the storybook vibe, but updates character readability and animation so everything feels really cohesive and modern. Tactics is a masterpiece that hasn't changed at all, and now it's easier than ever for people to experience it. Dragon Quest I and II HD 2D Remake is easily one of the best remakes of all time. I mean, this one ended up surprising me a lot. I played the original Dragon Quest I on mobile, and while I thought it was pretty good, it definitely was more of a short, bite-sized experience that felt very classic. But these HD 2D remakes bring these games into the modern age to help fans of the JRPG genre experience one of the greatest sets of games of all time. There's something almost magical about taking these foundational JRPGs, games that practically wrote the rules of the genre, and presenting them with these gorgeous visual styles of HD 2D. And that's really what makes this collection shine. The core of these games is untouched. The simple structure, the earnest storytelling, the classic turn-based battles, but the presentation breathes new life into every moment. Those glowing pixelated towns, the warm lighting on the fields, the way caves feel deeper and more atmospheric. It's like seeing your memory rebuilt with modern tooling. What struck me most during my playthrough was how clean the pacing feels now. Dragon Quest I is still a brisk little adventure, but the updates to UI, movement, readability make it smoother without rushing it. Dragon Quest II, now considered one of my favorite games in the entire series, benefits hugely from direction tweaks and some gentle adjustments that make its world feel more connected and less opaque. You still get that sense of wondering and discovery, but not the confusion of the older ports. And can we take a second to shout out Draki Quest mode? I mean, do you want to go off the beaten path and explore without getting beat to oblivion? Do you want to go find gear that you're way under leveled for and then break the game completely by finding stuff you're not supposed to yet? Well, for that, you've got Draki Quest mode, and I'm talking to you, Retro Brandon. And speaking of Retro Brandon, we have a podcast called Level Up Legacy, where me, Retro Brandon, and Moogle Avenger Mags are featured every single week, and we talk about amazing things like why IGN's Nintendo list is crazy and ranking Final Fantasy games and Pokemon games, and everybody agrees on all these opinions, and it's just so great. Be sure to go check it out. Anyway, let's get back to Dragon Quest. Here's why it landed so high on my list. It reminded me what I love about JRPGs, not complexity, not systems layered on systems, just that feeling of stepping into a little world, meeting people, helping them, and feeling like you're part of something that's warm and familiar. These games are the genre's roots, and HD 2D just makes them feel timeless instead of historical. Octopath Traveler 0 is the most recent release on this list, and I was actually waiting to make this list for this game to release because I honestly had the most excitement for this game and had a feeling that this was going to be one that I really wanted to put here. I just had no idea it would be this high on that list. Octopath Traveler 0 is one of the best games I've ever played, full stop. I'm not joking. And this is the moment where I realized, okay, Square Enix knows exactly what they're doing with this sub-series now. Octopath 0 feels like the team took everything that worked in the first two games, trimmed the fat, and pointed the narrative in a direction that feels more cohesive while respecting the multi-protagonist structure. The 8-character approach is still here, but the stories interlock more thoroughly this time. Instead of feeling like 8 separate books in the same library, it feels like 8 perspectives on the same event, all colored by their own personal struggles. The writing feels tighter, more emotionally grounded, and some of the arcs hit harder than I expected, especially once the characters start interacting more naturally. The combat is still the star though. The break and boost system remains one of the most satisfying turn-based mechanics ever. There's this rhythm to it that makes even random encounters feel like dynamic little puzzles. Octopath 0 adds a few wrinkles that give you more flexibility, and I found myself experimenting with team compositions way more than I did in earlier entries. Visually, the game is stunning. HD 2D is honestly beyond parody at this point. Every time I think I've seen the best version of it, Square outdoes themselves. The lighting, the camera, the movement, the little environmental animations, it all comes together to make the world feel very handcrafted. My favorite thing about Octopath 0 though is how confident it feels. It's not trying to prove itself anymore. It knows its strengths and it leans into them. And it delivers a tight, satisfying adventure that respects your time and rewards your curiosity. It got its hooks in me early, and instead of tapering off, it built momentum right up to the finale. It earns this number 3 spot because it's both a refinement and a reaffirmation of what makes Octopath so special. Now, these last 2 games were really hard for me to choose between. If you would have asked me when Expedition 33 released what my game of the year was, it was easily Expedition 33. And if you had asked me prior to the number 1 game on this list's release, what game was my game of the year? It was Expedition 33. It's very close because I love everything about this game. The story, the characters, the art style, the combat, everything is so good. This game blew me away in a multitude of ways. It hit me in a way I wasn't expecting. It's not considered a JRPG by many because of where it was made, but I'm putting it on this list because it's a game that is heavily inspired by some of the best JRPGs of all time. And if you're a fan of the genre and you like other games on this list, then you will adore this game. I highly recommend it. The party dynamics, the emotional arcs, the sense of journeying towards something terrifying and beautiful at the same time. That's all here, and it's wonderful. What makes Expedition 33 so special is its tone. It has this soft, dark tone wrapped around a sense of determination. Every step forward feels earned, like the characters are pushing not just against the world, but against their own doubts and regrets. The whole premise is sad and dark. The story could have easily been edgy or overly dramatic, but instead feels very poetic, grounded in the characters' struggles to define themselves in a limited amount of time. The combat took me a bit to settle into, but once it clicked, it clicked. It's stylish without being overwhelming, tactical without being super slow, and it makes smart use of positioning and timing. There's a weight to the animations that sells every hit and every counter. It reminds me a lot of what I love in games like Lost Odyssey, that blend of emotional stakes and mechanical clarity. And visually, this is one of the most striking games of the year. That oil paint aesthetic isn't just a gimmick. It plays into the theme, into the world building, into the way you inhabit the space. The story, though, that's what pushed it so high on this list. The relationships feel real. The characters feel very vulnerable. There were moments where I had to put the controller down and just sit with what I was experiencing. Expedition 33 is the kind of experience that sneaks up on you and then refuses to let go. A stunning game and absolutely deserving of its number 2 spot. Now let's get into the number 1 game on the list. But before that, I'm going to get into some more honorable mentions because there's just too many games. There's too many great games in 2025. So yeah, let's go over a few more that I really like that didn't quite make the list. I had never played Lunar games, but had always wanted to. The Lunar games are like comfort food. There's a sweetness to them, a sincerity that a lot of JRPGs don't aim for anymore. Having them in a polished, accessible package like this was just lovely. I loved Lunar Remastered Collection in ways I never imagined to. These games aren't trying to reinvent anything. They're just trying to be warm, heartfelt stories full of charm. I really enjoyed my time with these. They don't overstay their welcome. They're a ton of fun, and they are full of surprises. These games hold up super well, and I really enjoyed my time with them. All right, just like Lunar, we got another set of remasters in this classic JRPG series collection. Suikoden 1 and 2 remastered are great because they're a series that I had never played before. I always heard about how great Suikoden was, but man, I loved these games. I'm so glad they remastered these because they were an absolute joy to play through. Suikoden 1 and 2 look fantastic. The clean sprite work, the redone backgrounds, the little touches they've added. It's all very well done and made for a great experience with these games. Suikoden 1 and 2 defined ensemble storytelling in JRPGs, and getting a chance to experience them was honestly enough to make me quite emotional. The only reason this isn't in the top 10 is because the competition is just honestly brutal. And yes, they're remasters of just near perfect JRPGs, but they didn't go above and beyond in the changes that they made, so had to put it in the honorable mentions section. All right, last up in honorable mentions is Atelier Wrestleriana, and this ended up being a surprisingly emotional and very pretty Atelier entry, even though its structure is a bit different from the mainline series. I was actually not really into this game at first. It took its time to grow on me for sure, but after spending a lot more time with it, I fell in love with certain aspects of this game. The characters are great, the alchemy system is addictive, and the production values are way higher than I expected going in. It just didn't quite crack the top 10 because the early hours are a bit rough in my opinion. All right, time for the top spot on this list. No fake outs this time, and it has to be Trails in the Sky First Chapter. This remake is phenomenal, and it is way better than I had anticipated. I love the Trails series, and in fact, I've made my way through a lot of the Trails games, but I stopped after I finished Azure to kind of take a break because a lot of stuff was coming out, and I started my Trails journey a couple years ago. But Trails in the Sky holds a special place in my heart because it's the game that got me into the series itself. I fell in love with Trails in the Sky First Chapter, and I fell in love with Estelle and Joshua. And when they announced that they were remaking this game, I was ecstatic, so excited to experience it. But it exceeded all my expectations. Trails has always been about, the slow burn, about letting the world settle around you, letting the characters breathe, letting relationships form naturally. And the remake amplifies all of that without losing the heart that made the original so beloved. The character animations, the visual expressions, the little touches in the environments, everything feels alive in a way that enhances what was already there. But the real magic is how this remake highlights the warmth of the original game. Estelle and Joshua's dynamic has never felt more vivid. The dialogue has the perfect combination of earnestness and humor that Falcom nails when they're at their best. You really feel like you're traveling with these characters, growing with them, teasing them, worrying about them. I mean, this world just feels so lived in. The combat is smoother, cleaner, snappier, but still very much Trails. If you played the modern games like Daybreak, this is going to feel a little bit familiar to you. It's strategic without being too overwhelming, and the updated visual effects make every ability feel really satisfying. They modernized it just enough, but not too much, not too little. What surprised me most was how emotional the remake felt, even though I knew every story beat that was going to happen. Seeing these scenes reinterpreted with modern storytelling techniques, the lighting, the framing, the voice direction, it brought new weight to moments I thought I had fully absorbed years ago. And really, Trails FC is special because it understands the value of foundation. It's not about the big twists or the flashy battles, and believe me, there's plenty of those to have in this game. It's about building a world you want to live in and characters you want to follow. This remake reminded me why I fell in love with the series in the first place. This was the easiest #1 pick I've had in years. I love this game that much. Anyway, that wraps up my top 10 JRPGs of 2025 list. Now, this is a crazy year. I mean, just look at all the games on this list. If you would have told me 2 or 3 years ago that we'd be looking at a list like this, I would have been completely blown away. And it just seems like JRPGs keep getting better and better. And every year we're either getting classic games brought to the forefront in modern ways, or we're getting new IPs like Metaphor ReFantazio, or we're getting sequels to some of the best games in the genre. I am a huge fan of where this genre is heading, and I'm just really happy that I got to play all the games I got to play this year. But I really want to hear from you all. Let me know in the comments below what your favorite games of 2025 were. What disappointed you? Which games completely grabbed you? And what did I miss on my list? I always love reading through your comments, and you also put me on to so many games I would have missed otherwise. And hey, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe, share it with a friend that you think would enjoy what I do here. It really helps out the channel, but more importantly, it helps me connect with more fans of these games, and that's what makes all of this worth it in the end. That's it for me in this one. Until next time, I'm out.